with the outbreak of fighting in the Congo involving numerous states and numerous agendas. Because of its magnitude and horror, this conflict is often called America's First World War. Africa's First World War. Thank you. Just checking to see if you're awake. I see you are. The 1999 Lusaka ceasefire agreement signed by Angola, Congo, Rwanda, Namibia, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe ended fighting among nations, but not violence perpetrated by the various residual elements that were part of the conflict. As a result, millions of non-combatants continue to be displaced and killed, and most of the formal economy and infrastructure has been destroyed, and hunger and disease are rampant even to this day. We're really very honored to have panelists with us this morning that bring a level of expertise on the ground, as well as expertise both in terms of theory. And they'll be making comments here in a few moments, but I'd like to take a few moments to introduce each one of our panelists, and then I'll turn it over to them to make their opening comments. To my left is John Prendergast. John is a human rights activist and best-selling author who has worked for peace in Africa for over 25 years. He's the co-founder of the Enough Project, an initiative to end genocide and crimes against humanity that's affiliated with the Center for American Progress. John has worked for the Clinton White House, the United States Department of State, 2 members of the U.S. Congress, the National Intelligence Council, UNICEF, Human Rights Watch, and many others. I think one of the things, though, that I'm most interested that John has done is he's been a big brother for over 25 years, youth counselor, and a basketball coach. In fact, John's most recent book, called Unlikely Brothers, will be released on May 17th and is a dual memoir co-authored with his first little brother in the Big Brother program. So John, it's great to have you here with us today.
Thanks, man.
To John's left, we're very, very privileged to have Chouchou Namegabe, who is a pioneering, fearless voice for justice and accountability in the Congo. Born in Bukavu in the South Kivu province, Chouchou developed a strong interest in radio broadcasting and journalism as a young student. She saw radio as a way to reach the masses in Congo, the only medium of communication accessible to nearly everybody across the country. In 2003, Chouchou founded the South Kivu Women's Media Association to support her activism and train women journalists. Chouchou shines a spotlight on women's issues, especially in rural areas. She lifted the plight of the Congolese women to an international stage, traveling to The Hague in December 2007 to plead the case of Kivu's women at the International Court of Justice. Chouchou, it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you very much.
And finally, to Chouchou's left, we have our good colleague, Jendayi Frazer. Jendayi is the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, heading the Bureau of African Affairs. She currently serves as the Distinguished Service Professor at Carnegie Mellon University's Heinz College and Department of Social and Decision Sciences. Before taking her position in the Bush administration, Jendayi was Special Assistant to the President and Senior Director for African Affairs on the National Security Council, and actually was the first woman to serve as United States Ambassador to South Africa. Jendayi, it's good to have you here. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. So let me turn this to you, John, and if you wouldn't mind taking some few moments to open some comments.
Thanks, Randy, and it's an honor to be here on the platform with Chouchou and Jendayi, so I'm really excited to see what's going to happen. I lost my voice yesterday, and I'm slowly regaining it and protecting it all morning. Dear friend Whitney made honey lemon tea, so this should be the first step on the road to recovery. But as you all know, a human rights activist without a voice is like, I don't know, a Reese's peanut butter cup without chocolate, something. There's some kind of analogy here that would work for everyone, but I will do my best, and if I falter, luckily I have a very strong panel here that can pick me up. So I want to focus my 7 minutes, which start right now, right, on what might just be the deadliest secret in the world, and that is that every one of us in this room, everyone at this conference, in this city, in this country, is indirectly, innocently, and inadvertently connected to and financing the deadliest war in the world that we are sitting here this morning to talk about in the Congo. Armed groups are fighting over this lucrative mineral trade that powers our cell phones and our laptops and iPods and video games and digital cameras, all the kinds of products that we've come to rely on this 21st century. And it leaves a trail of human destruction, this demand, that has no equal globally since World War II. I took, my last trip that I took with the actor Ryan Gosling, we talked to survivors of this silent war. And we wanted to know not only what they experienced, but we wanted to ask them directly, what messages do they have for those of us who have come to rely on cell phones and laptops and these other electronics products that connect us to the Congo inadvertently. So I want to tell you about a few of the people that we met. Marie is a rape survivor twice over. She's overcome her suffering and her trauma to found her own women's organization that helps others who have survived sexual crimes. We asked her what message she would have for the electronics companies, and she said, quote, "Please stop this bloody business. You are fueling conflict. Families are being torn apart, women are being raped, communities are being destroyed so armed groups can profit from the mines. Companies should stop supporting this and do ethical business." And all of you know that in a conflict this deadly, there's also going to be terrible uprooting of individuals, families, and communities, and there's no exception here in Congo with a displacement rate that's one of the highest in the world. So we visited internally displaced camps while we were there. We found Mapendo, a young woman who survived an attack on her village in which members of an armed militia went door to door, raping women and killing men. In reply to the questions we asked her, she said starkly, there is no difference between the phone companies and the people doing the killing here in Congo. The president of one refugee camp told us, quote, "The problem in Congo is greed. They should prosecute the greedy people, wherever they come from, who benefit from illegal minerals." We also talked to a young man named Innocent, who had been driven from his home by an armed group taking over a nearby mine. And he said, quote, "The people that are doing this to me are the people who are making the phones that use these minerals." Esther, another displaced camp resident, challenged us in a unique way. Quote, again, "I want the users of these minerals to come live in these camps with us so they can understand what we're going through." And finally, because I could go on all day for the entire weekend, finally a 14-year-old girl whom we befriended spoke with a level of clarity well beyond her years when she told us anyone who buys a cell phone should question their conscience and insist on fair trade. The truth of what we heard from survivors is rooted in simple economics. The profits that are made from this illicit mineral trade arise from market demand for such minerals. If consumers like all of us here, particularly in this area, and particularly younger people, demand conflict-free products, then companies will eventually meet that demand, in turn cratering the market for minerals mined through violence. And we see this at the Enough Project as the catalyst, not the silver bullet, but the catalyst for the broader reforms that must take place in Congo that my colleagues will inevitably discuss. You can't reform the army, for example, if the army is structured around plundering the mineral wealth. You can't build a judiciary if the government leaders rely on a collapsed state, you see, to privatize the profits that everyone is making, that the elite are making off of this illegal extraction. You can't have meaningful elections if we're just going to be rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. So, luckily, instead of feeling guilty or even boycotting consumer electronics, which simply isn't going to happen, there are things that consumers can do and the positive steps they can take that will have an impact directly on this deadly trade in conflict minerals. And I want to talk to you about a few of the things that we're helping to organize in a broader coalition of groups called Raise Hope for Congo campaign. First, doing direct consumer advocacy to the companies themselves. We try actually to encourage people to directly contact the biggest electronic companies. We have an email function that can contact the 21 largest electronic companies to demand conflict-free products. What we did at the Enough Project is we ranked these 21 companies on the basis of what actions they've taken on conflict minerals to date. And we found that 2/3 of them have done little to nothing in response to the activism. So the theory, though, is if we get enough consumers demanding conflict-free products, they will supply them, just like with the Blood Diamonds campaign that ended the deadly trade eventually and helped stop 3 wars in West Africa. Second thing we're doing is we're working with students all over the country to create conflict-free campuses. So far, Stanford and Penn, Yale is going to be next. They're preparing the strongest one yet, a few others, but dozens and dozens of schools have resolutions either in student councils or with their administrations. And we see this as sort of the beginning of, the kind of thing we saw with the divestment campaign for Darfur and the kind of actions that we saw on campuses during the anti-apartheid movement. So we're just at the beginning of that. The third action that we're pushing for is to do the same thing we're doing on campuses with cities and states. This Tuesday, we have Pittsburgh that's going to pass a resolution demanding conflict-free products. We had a bill last week introduced in the California State Legislature that passed the first committee hurdle and looks like it's going to go because the leadership is on board. So we have all these state and city initiatives that we're beginning to do as well, and that vests local communities in their efforts. Now, Congo is the deadliest war in the world for a reason. For the last 150 years, the world has taken whatever it wanted from this country, from the people who were enslaved for America's plantations, to ivory for our jewelry, to rubber for our automobile industry, to uranium for our atomic bombs, to today's conflict minerals for our cell phones, laptops, and the other electronics products. Finally, a global people's movement has begun to be formed, led by students, to stop this history of destructive extraction. Now that you know, what will you do? Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, John. Well, clearly, there's lots of content there that we want to follow up on, so we look forward to some questions on that. Thank you for those comments. Chouchou, again, it's terrific to have you here. And last night when Chouchou and I were having dinner together, she said, my English isn't great and I only speak French. And I said, well, my French isn't great and I only speak English, so we'll figure it out. But no, we're pleased to have you here and look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start my speech with a short history of the conflict in the eastern part of Congo. In 1994, we saw refugees from Rwanda after the genocide, and Congo was pushed to open the borders to refugees and to militias who entered with arms and munitions. It was in 1994. It was pushed by the international community. And in 1996, it was a broken down of the first war, the war called Liberation War. And after that war, we started hearing about rape, but it wasn't with at high level. After the broken down of the Second War in 1998, rape and sexual violences took another level that we couldn't understand. It was during really the occupation of neighbors' countries. And I was working at that time in Radio Maendeleo, which is a community radio station. And after 1999, people could not talk about it because it was under the rebels' government. And even we could talk about it, we couldn't responsibilize people. And with NGOs, female NGOs, we said we have to talk about it because it took really a level that we couldn't understand. And in 2001, with NGOs, we started denouncing cases of rape and sexual violences. And I remember the first time when I broadcast the testimony of rape, it was a shock in the community. And people reacted and said how we could talk widely about sex on the radio. But we had to explain that it wasn't a problem of sex, a problem of women, but it was a big problem of all the community. And from that time, we didn't have even word to talk about it. Rape didn't exist in our local languages, Mashi, Kirega, Swahili from Bukavu. And we borrowed a word from Swahili from Tanzania, and it was media who taught to people the word ubakaji, which means rape. And when we talk with victims, we couldn't understand why such atrocities could be done on people. Really, rape was used as a weapon, as a strategy to destroy all the community. By using rape, I can share with you some testimonies of victims, like a woman who was raped and took in the forest with her 5 children. And each day passed, she was raped, and they killed her child in front of her. She saw how they cut the heart, and they forced her to eat the flesh of her children. She asked to be killed, but they refused. They said, "We can't give you a good death." So we couldn't understand. There are a group of women who were raped, and after the rape, they put fuel in their vagina and put fire. It wasn't to kill them. No, they didn't like to kill them, but after they extinguished the fire, to let them suffer with the wounded. There are many cases we didn't understand. That's why, after hearing all that testimonies, I said, I have to do something. I had to do something, and that's why I get engaged, involved in the advocacy and in the fight. And for us, we couldn't know if to give the mic to victims could help them. And after they told us that it was the first way to heal their internal wounds, because really there are many hundreds of thousands of women who have been raped, and there's still a large number of that who are still hiding. They are rotten where they are because there is no facilities to reach their villages. And with AFEM, we started giving them voice to record their testimonies, to orient them for assistances, like medical assistances and other assistances. And for us, it is the only way we can do to get involved in the fight. We are making advocacy on a different level. And when you meet that woman, they are stronger women, very strong. For us, when we give them the mic to tell their stories, the first thing that they show us is a smile. I can't imagine how that woman who had such atrocities can show smile. But she said, we lived such atrocities, but we don't like it to happen to other generations. So I have to testify. I have to say what happened to me. And I like even to give my all identity. Don't hide my identity, because I'd like it to stop. What they need is peace, is security. And they want us, they don't like our pity, no. They say, no, we don't like the pity, but we want you to act with us, to work with us. And really, they are strong women. And you could see women who built it, the City of Joy, with V-Day. Really, they are strong women. They could take the big stones and build with their forces the city. And I know there are many NGOs, NGOs who are involved in the advocacy. I'd like really to thank you. And you are doing the great job. Even today, if that the problem of Congo is known, it's because you did a great job. Because really, when we started the fight, Congo was forgotten. Congo was forgotten. And I ask you to continue the fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Chouchou. We look forward to asking additional questions in your comments. Thank you. Jendayi.
Thank you very much. And again, it's a pleasure to be here at the Global Philanthropy Forum and to discuss Central Africa with my fellow panelists and the chair. We were asked to look particularly at solutions, and I think John has done a very good job of talking about the activist community and trying to target action. And I think Chouchou has done an excellent job of bringing voice to the many victims of this crisis. And what I'd like to do today, because I'm coming from the U.S. government in the past, not now, currently, is to try to look at what would be a comprehensive approach to addressing the challenge. And in particular, my bottom line is I think that there are basically several inflection points that we're at which could lead to a turning point for ending or not a war in Eastern Congo. And I think that we can work together to create strategic lines of action. And so I want to talk about those inflection points, those lines of actions, and then a little bit on U.S. policy, maybe during the Q&A if I run out of time. First, I think it's important, if we're really talking about mobilizing diverse communities to address the challenges in the Congo, that we need to change the framing a little bit. We need to shift the framing, the script from one of the Congo as a problem to the Congo as necessary to solve global challenges. Building diverse communities of interest. For instance, if you look at climate change and you recognize the centrality of the Congo with the second largest rainforest in the world as vital to playing a vital role in regulating climate, mitigating the effects of greenhouse gas emissions, especially through forest conservation and reforestation. You can bring in those communities. If you look at the issue of power and electricity as a bottleneck to economic development, then you have to look at the Congo River and innovations in addressing hydropower, because it has the potential to light up the whole of Africa and beyond. If you're addressing poverty in Africa, look strategically at Congo as the fourth largest country in Africa after Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Egypt, 18th most populous country in the world. If you solve poverty in Congo, you're making a major dent on poverty globally. And indeed, if you deal with the questions of atrocities, the questions of justice, the questions of rape as an instrument of war, the solutions that are coming out of Congo, even at the community-based as well as galvanizing action, for instance, in the UN and other places, Congo is playing a key role, because we know that rape as an instrument of war is a global problem, not just a Congolese problem. So I think it's very important to reframe DRC as part of global solutions, and in that way affect investment, attention, and prioritization of the country, to change that prioritization from one of victimization to a narrative of the ability to solve world problems. That's one point of inflection, is the framing. The second point of inflection is the need to build on what has been a major change recently, regional cooperation in the Great Lakes region. We saw this war end in 2003. We've had more regional cooperation in the past few years than we've had through the entire, I don't know, last 20 years, I would say. But we still have to deal with marauding rebels, militia groups that use the neighboring countries and porous borders as rear bases for exploiting Congolese minerals, for attacking and displacing its people. So how can we use that regional engagement? So that's a second point of inflection, is building on the regional cooperation that we see today. A third point of inflection is the upcoming election, and that's really where I say it can or may not end the war. This election is instrumental in terms of providing a national agenda-setting moment. The ability to bring citizens into holding their government and their political leaders accountable, requiring them to set out an agenda that represents all of the Congolese. And so I think that sort of building on and putting a serious focus and attention on the November elections is critically important. And my time is over, and so or close to over, and so we can talk about each one of those points. How do you deal with regional cooperation to create a greater security environment? How do you deal with the national elections to build greater legitimacy and citizen participation in governance? But let me just go in my opening remarks to the U.S. government very, very quickly and say what I think there. First of all, I think that it's been said over and over again that Congo needs to be a priority. Quite frankly, if you look at our funding, and we talk a lot about these huge challenges, but our funding really doesn't match the level of prioritization that Congo deserves. We will spend the 2012 request is about $261 million, of which only $26 million is for peace and security issues. We're even talking about the need to professionalize and retrain the FARDC so it can become an instrument of stability and protection of civilians. And when you look at the actual budget for it, it's less than $20 million to do that training. Sometimes it's even just $500,000. The U.S. government is putting $17 million into the issue of sexual violence. So frankly, our numbers don't match the rhetoric. So that's the first thing. Secondly, we know we're in a climate of budget cutting. And so what can help compensate for the lack of numbers is engagement. We have to significantly increase the level of engagement of our senior officials going to the Congo. A trip every 3 or 4 years is not going to get it. There needs to be consistent engagement, and we need to create the mechanisms for that engagement. We have strategic dialogues with South Africa, with Angola, with countries that are important. Why don't we have a strategic dialogue with the Congo? Why can't we look at the provincial reconstruction teams that we have in Afghanistan as a model of what we potentially could be doing in Eastern Congo? You know, part of the problem here is building state capacity, and that's something that takes place over a long period of time. You have to get engaged. We have to offset our dollars with our activity. We have to significantly increase it. So that, I think, is where I will stop. I look forward to the questions and answers. And I think that, you know, this panel, I think it can provide a lot of good thoughts about how we can really make this a turning point to end the deadliest conflict as we come to frame the Congo. Thank you.